Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the former Conservative special advisor, Anita Boateng. Welcome to both of you. Lots to discuss. So let's check out the front pages then, starting with The Times and the defection of Tory MP Natalie Elphicke to Labour is their top story. The headline, Starmer splits the party by accepting a Tory defector. The Eye, meanwhile, carries a warning from pollsters that not even a cut in interest rates can save Rishi Sunak at the next election. In the Daily Mail, the Conservative chairman warns that the country is in danger of being taken over by dangerous sectarian politics. The Telegraph previews a speech by the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, calling on the EU to get tougher with Russia over Ukraine. The Guardian leads with a poll of scientists which predicts catastrophic temperature rises are on the way, caused by climate change. The Metro has the story of 18-month-old Opal Sandy, who was born deaf but can now hear thanks to a gene therapy trial on the NHS. Worlds apart, the Mirror looks at Prince Harry's return to the UK as him and his father attend events 2 miles away from each other. According to the Financial Times, 50 firms which did big business during the pandemic, including Zoom and Peloton, have lost $1.5 trillion in value between them since the end of 2020. And finally, The Star mourns the loss of some of the more colourful insults in the English language, apparently caused by young people not knowing what they mean. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us and listen to our guests. So let's head to Kevin and Anita. Well, let's kick off with Natalie Elphicke. I don't know whether to start with the Tory perspective or Labour.
Oh, go with the Tory.
Go with the Tory,
yeah.
OK, right. The Times then, Starmer splits the party by accepting a Tory defector. The Tory defector, first of all, how damaging is this for Rishi Sunak? And what do you make of the Tory defector who's decided to defect?
So I think in terms of how damaging, I guess the answer to the question is it's so bizarre almost that, like, the narrative amongst Conservative MPs certainly is a bit of consternation and a bit of sort of rallying around, but also quite a big degree of bafflement. So in a way, like, it doesn't tell a particular clear story. And actually, Natalie Elphicke's statement, which is covered in part in this Times piece, but in others, kind of has a vague line about, you know, Rishi is not delivering, the centre ground hasn't been abandoned, which to most people didn't read like it was necessarily in Natalie's voice and doesn't have any specifics that really kind of speak to particularly immigration, which is obviously she is a Dover MP, and Dover is kind of one of the constituencies at the front line of small boats crossings, and she's been very vocal on that. So in some ways, it's so bizarre to MPs that it hasn't quite had the impact, I think, that that Labour was certainly intending in unveiling her at PMQs and then trying to ask lots of questions about immigration and small boats during the session.
No, it is totally extraordinary, is it not? I mean, what is the centre ground to an MP like Natalie Elphicke, for example? Even Ian Dale called her a hard right Tory headbanger.
Yeah.
Why does the Labour Party want a hard right Tory headbanger? I'm sure she'd dispute it, but talking about the centre ground, it's not been her politics.
Yeah, well, if Jacob Rees-Mogg and
Nigel Farage is the
on their way.
They were asked about that.
You know, you have to go back to 1977 to have a Labour MP defecting to the Conservatives when it was Reg Prentice. She's now the third Conservative MP defecting to Labour in this Parliament. Christian Wakeford, I can understand, he had bigger issues around employment. You could see Dan Poulter a fortnight ago, the NHS. But no, I can't. I thought it was a joke or it was a mistake with her, because everything she has said so consistently is being head-banging right. You would have thought she's more likely to defect to Reform UK than the Labour Party. Now, maybe she was a deep Labour sleeper agent all those years. Maybe she's had a Damascene conversion on the way to Parliament. Or maybe it's just terrible opportunism. But no, Starmer hasn't united his party. He has split it over it because they are thinking, why have you taken Natalie Elphicke with everything she said, attacking trade unions when P&O were sacking workers, saying you can't control the borders, being slightly deranged extremist, blaming the EU for bureaucracy when it was Britain that came out of the common market. Obviously, the issue of the boats. And he'd go on and on and on. Never mind we get into having a dig at Marcus Rashford, who campaigned for free school meals, or having a pretty vile attack on the women who accused her husband of sexually assaulting them when he was convicted and jailed and she got the seat. So no, he's... the Times are right. Starmer's split his party over this particular defect.
Well, look at the quote in the front of The Guardian, then. We don't need people like that. Labour fury over Tory defector. Keir Starmer is facing a shadow cabinet anger, even at that level. Really, really extraordinary stuff about whether he even thought of saying no to her. But from his point of view, he's now got immigration with her being Dover and Deal MP, and he's got the NHS with Dr Dan Poulter, who's also decided
and what he can say is, I've got Conservatives who say you can't trust the Conservatives on these key issues. When Suella Braverman says Labour's not to be trusted on the borders, you'll say, here is Natalie Elphicke. I'm not buying it myself, but he can say Labour's gathering MPs and the Conservatives are losing them.
Sorry, I mean, I think this is a thing that took literally everyone in Westminster by surprise. And so there was an opportunity for them to set out a really clear, an op-ed, a broadside that specifically went through why Natalie Elphicke thinks that Labour's approach to immigration is going to be more substantive, given she has consistently criticised Labour in particular and in public as well as in private about their approach to this issue. And the fact that that is not forthcoming means that this is quite dented in that respect. And I also wanted to reference this point around, the division. So apparently a female Labour MP was in tears over the news. It's interesting, very interesting, that the Shadow Chief Whip appears in the Times saying that he was late onto the discussion.
But he doesn't say, it's briefed.
And it's understood to have, and understood to have expressed concerns. Interesting that even the Shadow Chief Whip or someone around him is briefing that he's not happy about this news. And then you've also got Neil Kinnock, former leader of the party, basically saying we've got to be choosy about who we allow in our party. So, and the fact that you've got a situation where you go on Twitter and you see the likes of people tweeting, how is Diane Abbott not in the party, but Natalie Elphicke is? There is a real sense of disquiet, perhaps particularly on the kind of Labour left of the party, that says, what does this party really stand for?
Well,
because Kevin just listed a whole suite of issues. It's not one or two. And of course, Labour Tory, that happens, where the party and Natalie Elphicke seem incredibly far apart. So what is the message
Starmer's
here?
quest is just to go after Conservative voters. That's what it is. And he thinks he's left. The traditional Labour voters will be there. Now, he lost some to the Greens.
And the Workers' Party.
And very few. But to the Greens were the nibbling. And of course, there's an issue with some of the Muslim community over Gaza. But he keeps going after Conservative voters. But I think sometimes you can be too clever by half.
Yeah.
And I think that is the case here with her, because she is so far right. And it's a fair point. Why is Diane Abbott still suspended when somebody who has said so much that would get her suspended if she'd been a Labour MP at the time, is now welcomed with open arms, and look, there we are, giving a nice little handshake, little, hand on the shoulder. I mean,
go on. You make a point. I've got another question, but yeah.
And what is the weakness of Sir Keir Starmer? People say we don't know what he stands for. How does this explain who Keir Starmer stands for?
He stands for ruthlessly winning. That's what he thinks he's doing.
But the point of how do you win?
Ruthlessly winning.
You win by by telling people who you are. Is this who Keir Starmer is? It's baffling.
No, he's taking Conservatives, but if you're Rishi Sunak, you have lost your third MP, or he's lost two, the other one. Wakeford went before him.
So you think it won't impact Labour's voting? Might it impact...
I don't know, it might, actually.
I mean, the Tories have gone from 80 majority when Boris Johnson won in 2019 to 38. I mean, that's, hemorrhaging over half now.
Yeah, fair few of them...
Does it keep going? Do we see more by-elections as Tory MPs decide they're not standing at the next election?
I think most of them now, you kind of see they don't want to trigger by-elections because they lose. They want to keep on getting their pay. until they go. And if there are sleazing,
I think that's very unfair to MPs.
No, it's not. And if there are sleaze inquiries to get the 10-day suspensions, which trigger recall ballots, that takes some time. So I doubt we'll get any of those again this side of the election.
And to the Daily Mail now, they say they have an exclusive. After dozens of pro-Gaza candidates were elected in local polls, the Tory chair now accusing Starmer of embracing a threat to democracy, talking about sectarian politics taking over, something that Rishi Sunak was addressed at the weekend. He said he's spoken about it on the steps of Downing Street and so on. So, you know, where is this threat coming from? Is it genuine?
But Richard Holden, the Conservative Party chair, is a very sectarian politician himself. The Daily Mail is no stranger to sectarianism. It's just which strand do you take? So I think that should be taken with a pinch of salt. And it seems to be the Green Party have issues with several councillors, some of whom used to be in the Labour Party, and then they left the Labour Party, went to the Greens, and there are issues around them. But he now seems to have just transferred that, Holden, for his own party political purposes, on the Labour. I think this is a pretty shallow attack by him.
Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't use sectarian to describe himself.
No, he wouldn't.
I mean,
but
partisan, maybe. But I mean, you were.
I don't think Kevin explained what the story was about at all. So I think
it's a bit of political point scoring by a party chair in a paper that is backing the Conservatives. That's what it is.
So effectively, I think this is a really important issue actually, which is that in the conflict in Israel and Gaza, it's really important that all people in public life, including councillors, and being a councillor, you have a platform, you have a profile, and you have to use your voice responsibly. And there have been these instances where, and absolutely right people to get involved in politics, but the way that some of the Jewish community feel at the moment, and certainly some of the Muslim community similarly as well, during this conflict, it's crossing over into what I think is quite bitter divisions in the country. And I think it is important that we encourage, and actually we do reprimand people who are not living up to those standards.
Yes, and actually, on that note, we are getting warnings in the papers, aren't we, by Sunak, that actually universities do have to protect children against anti-Semitism, or young people, I should say, at that point. Cambridge fails to clear protests. Sunak warns of anti-Semitism is on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Fear of contagion of the protests that we've seen in America, for example, about this as well.
Yes, but you're right. You've got to come down hard on anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or any other form of racism, but protests in themselves are not automatically anti-Semitic. And we see this with the marches through London, and you'll now see it in the university protests. If there is any anti-Semitism around them, it has to be tackled. And there are specific issues. If you do have Jewish students on a campus, whether it's Oxford, Cambridge, any other university, and they feel threatened by it, those concerns have to be addressed. Well, that doesn't mean you cannot protest.
That's bottom left paragraph, but we were going to talk about the lead story. David Cameron, the EU must be tougher on Russia. This on the day that the Russian defence attaché is being booted out of Britain, and we await retaliation, no doubt, from Moscow about that as well, and the bases that they've identified too.
Yeah, and actually this is a really serious kind of moment where Lord Cameron has set out a broad kind of big picture about how the UK and actually the West should be responding to this issue as a whole, and really like the increasing geopolitical threat. So Lord Cameron kind of doesn't just talk about Russia, actually he talks about the response, for instance, to what's happened in the Red Sea. And the point is, act quickly, act decisively. Like, we can't cede ground and wait to see what happens in some of these instances where values and people's lives are being threatened. So I think a kind of important and quite provocative piece, I think, encouraging the West to have a more muscular approach to protecting its values.
It's not long ago that the Conservative Party was running on Russian and Russian-linked money.
That's a big allegation.
No, it was. No, there was a report into it. It showed it. Remember tennis lessons being auctioned off? I
think some of those people would say quite clearly that they are formally exiled from Russia as a result of the fact that they, were persecuted by the Russian regime. But please do continue.
OK, we will leave that one there if you don't mind. Coming up, the King and Prince Harry hold separate functions in London, but questions persist over why they are not seeing each other. Back in just a moment. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me, once again, Kevin Maguire and Anita Boateng. Welcome back to both of you. Let's get to the eye, shall we? Interest rate decision coming up. A cut had been expected, but the predictions seem to be that it won't happen. But this is a political story about, even a cut in interest rates won't save Sunak, Kevin.
No, and according to the eye, the expectation is, yes, it's going to be held tomorrow, 5.25, and no cut until the autumn, which politically is very damaging for the Prime Minister. Inflation's come down. He was hoping interest rates would come down too, so people would feel better off. Well, if it's delayed, it's very hard to translate, to your argument. The economy's turned a corner. You're going to get better. Well, if people aren't feeling better, then it's very hard to get that message across.
Yeah, and the tricky bit for the Bank of England is, the criticism is, did they leave it too late to put interest rates up?
Yeah.
And are they holding on to them for too long, thereby damaging the economy when it's already in the right direction? So, it's, this is... The pressure comes from there as well, doesn't it?
Yes, and the other thing that's worth remembering is the bank doesn't just completely decide in isolation. What the Federal Reserve does makes a huge difference, and you can't really row hugely outside of their direction. So I don't think it's hugely surprising that interest rates are being held at 5.25%. But there are, I guess I wouldn't categorise it quite as being like, this is a thing that's going to save or determine an election, but I think having more positive economic news would be a positive thing. I think it just requires some more patience to ensure that we really get inflation under control, which is the thing that is biting the most.
Let's go to the royals now. Obviously, Prince Harry with Diana's family. This is the Mirror. And, there we go, worlds apart, no royal reunion, but just 2 miles separate, King Charles and Prince Harry. I know you're not a royalist, but still lovely to see the King out and about, meeting the 8,000 guests at a royal garden party.
This will pain royalists, though, when you've got... the family is clearly badly split, and there's been so much bad blood in public recently, and cancer can sometimes, an illness can bring people together. It hasn't, if they're still 2 miles apart and citing diary clashes. Look... 2 miles apart, you jump in a cab, you're over, hello, Dad, big hug, hope you're OK, here's a prezi, and then off you go, and none of that's happening. It's astonishing.
But he met a world leader today, he had 8,000 people in his garden, it was a busy day. Run out of time, sorry about that, Anita, I didn't get to you on this one, but Kevin Maguire and Anita Boateng, thank you very much indeed.